keep going, keep going.
Well, it's just like at this point, you know, what we've had happen is the kind of normalizing of saying that the positions that the vast majority of American Jews hold are it's a very slippery slope to just be. I mean, the obvious endpoint is Trump saying, you know, the 80% of Jews who didn't vote for me are disloyal.
Yeah. Yeah, even with the IRA, there was a political wing of the movement and there was a militant wing of the movement. These things cannot exist without the other. Okay? There is no world in which one can be successful on its own. You can't, you cannot demand that a state, and a state like Israel, the recognition that you deserve as a human being. Okay? And of course, as the maintenance of the apartheid state becomes more violent, the reaction and the retaliation to that in the form of militant resistance is going to become more violent as well. Having said that, you still need a political movement or peaceful resistance to work alongside this. All right. We have Simone Zimmerman in the building, ladies and gentlemen. She is responsible for the Israelism documentary. We've watched it on stream before. And also, of course, joining me is Noah Kulwin, who's been staying with me. And I'm very excited to have you here. There's a lot we're going to talk about. You got to get real up close to the microphone when you speak, by the way, just before chat starts chirping at you.
How we sounding?
I just want to let you know, you are in the presence of StopAntisemitism.org's second runner-up for Anti-Semite of the Year. I did lose to...
In 2020. In 2020.
Oh, wait, you were...
I was back in 2020.
Oh, wait, she too.
Oh,
they both
sorry.
are. You have this in common.
Wait, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, you were also almost anti-Semite of the Year.
Yeah, I was in the top 3.
Who lost? Who'd you lose to?
Near Dean.
Oh, okay. That was
and Ice Cube. No, Ice Cube didn't get it, but we were in the
yeah, you forgot Ice Cube had that
Oh
face.
shit. Okay, that's crazy. I lost to Candace Owens. Your year is a tough one because
well, I don't know. Maybe Simone had kind of a Mickey Mouse ring because like you're dealing with it like post October 7th,
yeah.
when it's like, you know, there's like it's a lot of competition. Whereas back then, Simone, perhaps it was.
I was just like chilling in my apartment during the pandemic, and they were like offering $360 Amazon gift cards to people to vote for me. I was just like trying to you know,
amazing,
bake whatever Alison Roman.
So they had to rig it. They had to rig it against like a woman making shallot pasta in the Brooklyn apartment.
Well, my favorite on that one. Hold on, I'm gonna fix it. I'm going to increase her volume. Chat, shut the f up. I know. Okay. My problem.
There it is.
I know. Oh my God, that's amazing. I love this because this year is so obviously. Oh, this is Nardine Kiswani. Never mind. This is someone else. Rabid Jew hater and supporter. I thought it was the year where the Ben and Jerry's lady got that. It's not. Nardine Kiswani is not the Ben and Jerry's lady. I don't really know enough about her, but I guess. Oh, she's New York City chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. Okay, hold on. Brooklyn Day of Rage protests, calling death to American Israel, threatening to set people on fire over wearing IDF sweatshirt and bullying Jewish students at her current law school, CUNY. I don't believe anything that Stop Anti-Semitism says, so I'm going to take that with not just a singular grain of salt, but multiple. And also, I'm going to fix your audio really quickly. Hold on. I lost to Candace Owens, who is actually an anti-Semite.
She actually is anti-Semite.
Yeah, I genuinely think the reason why I lost to Candace Owens, who is a real anti-Semite, was because she is a black woman, and Stop Anti-Semitism unironically like hates women of color more than anything else. So I think like she was like, all right, you know, this year we're going to give it to a real anti-Semite instead.
Yeah, it is kind of surprising that they did that. But they got her also in the intersection of real anti-Semitism and also rabid anti-Zionism.
Well, yeah, so because she went after their boy. She was like, well, why is Ben Shapiro so powerful or whatever? Wasn't like he like part of the basis of their schism?
Yeah, but she also was part of that really disgusting amplifying of like, it started with the like ADL truther conspiracy. Yeah,
right, like, I remember it. Yeah. Because they've been obsessed with like going back to the Leo Frank stuff.
Yeah, the Leo Frank thing didn't happen, and then you know the reason that Israel does apartheid is because like in the Torah it says
Yes.
Jews are,
Oh no, Talmud too,
In the
right?
Talmud.
No, not the
Talmud.
Torah.
Yeah.
No,
I forgot
Talmud.
that she was a scholar.
Yeah. So she held that like really. I have to say, I tuned into it for a second. That was some dark shit with Andrew Tate and Dan Bilzerian. It was like
he's
the Nazis against Israel chat room. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always super cool to hear all of the most prominent figures. The right elevates all the time. They all just happen to be actual anti-Semites. So then what happens? Most of the anti-Zionist sentiment you hear come from people who aren't actually anti-Zionist at all. They don't really give a shit. They just hate Jews, all while simultaneously suppressing voices like mine and apparently like yours as well. I don't think a Jewish person has ever won Anti-Semite of the Year yet.
Yeah, they don't want the smoke, dude.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, they just want us on the list.
Yeah, those who don't know who are watching, also, I see a couple people in chat asking. Ice Cube had a moment. He had a moment where his relationship with the Jewish community was challenged because of some comments, but it's all good now. It's all in the past. It's all buried, and
They got together.
He's linked and built with the best of them in the Jewish establishment. Since.
Noah was at the meetings, the media control meetings.
Don't worry about it. I was there. I can vouch. We're all good. It's in the past.
Yeah. HasanAbi is my favorite anti-Semite because he's constantly educating people about the harms of anti-Semitism, calls out anti-Semites, and never says anything anti-Semitic. Truly a positive example for anti-Semites everywhere. Yeah. I do have a conspiracy on this, though. I legitimately do have a conspiracy. I want to run it by both of you guys, okay? I have this suspicion that the likes of Dan Bilzerian and the likes of Andrew Tate and the likes of Candace Owens and like these very obviously anti-Semitic people are often elevated and highlighted because they're much easier to disparage, especially among like polite society. So that you can say, see, every single person that shits on Israel is not doing so because of some progressive reason. Or yeah, Jake Shields is another example too. But they're doing it because they're anti-Semitic. To basically cast this broad brush and to justify the notion that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are one of the same. And it's always born out of some mysterious secret anti-Semitism. That's the reason why, Jews such as yourself are also criticizing Israel's actions.
I think that's like a pretty good theory. I mean, I would say I think it's also it's good to elevate those people because then we don't have to pay attention to like all the Nazis who really love Israel and all the people on the far right that pro-Israel groups and Israeli government officials have really deep relationships with, and there are actually far more of those deep connections across the global far right with the pro-Israel movement than there are the Candace Owens of the world.
Yeah, there are more rabidly anti-Semitic pro-Israel people out there than there are Jews anti-Zionist or pro-Zionist alike. That is something that a lot of people fail to comprehend or consider. Obviously, look at the Christian evangelical movement. Like those guys just simply either by force or gently want to send all the Jews to the desert so that the rapture can happen. And then, everybody obviously burns in eternal hellfire unless they convert to Christianity.
I would also add that like there is like I think a sense also with like that like right wing appreciation of Israel that like they look at the anti-Semitism is not just grounded in the like apocalyptic like millenarian style stuff about needing to gather all the Jews in Israel, although that's real for a lot of them. But it's also about this idea that like, oh yeah, the Jews run everything and we want to too. Like it's the idea of like
you're saying it's like a Japanese style of philo-Semitism?
Yeah. No, it's like a model. It's like a model global minority thing. Like, can you believe like these guys are 0.002% of the world population yet drive like 20% of the discourse? Like imagine like, how that would be if like, India could finally stand up or, like pick a country that has like a raging nationalist movement at this moment that like, could look at something like Israel and be like, that's a plausible outcome for us. It's that to me explains a lot of it as well.
Yeah, you notice I'm pretty sure StopAntisemitism.org did not go after Richard Spencer, who was, very much like we want to do here what they've already done in Israel.
Exactly.
Yeah,
He called himself a white Zionist, I think.
Yeah, no, he had this like really freaky confrontation with a rabbi at a university in Texas. I remember this really well, where he basically said like, "How can you call me an anti-Semite? I love what they've done with Israel. I think we should do it here." And the guy he was talking to was like, I remember pretty like he didn't quite have a good response to that.
Yeah. That is, woke anti-Semitism. being pro-Israel is the greatest shield that you can have, as Ben Shapiro once famously openly admitted to when Ann Coulter was saying some shit about Jewish people. I don't know what she was saying, but she was saying like they control the media or whatever. And Ben Shapiro famously tweeted out, Ann Coulter regarding Jews. She loves Israel, so I will not lose sleep over her very obviously anti-Semitic statements. Like straight up, just kind of giving the game away, but nobody really cares. But that's just, that's just how it works, really. I will say there is a troublesome nature to, I think, a lot of the prominent conversation taking place right now with the likes of Patrick Bet-David, as Andrew Tate has returned from Romania to come to the United States of America and go on all these podcasts, go on his like media tour, where apparently biggest scam in history, Andrew Tate's explosive World War II theory challenges the narrative.
Oh God,
that's valuetainment.
I find.
Do you know who Patrick Bet-David is, Simone?
I've like heard the name, but
wait, don't say anything.
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
No,
Did you
hold
guys
on.
just talk about this on Bad Hasbara?
Patrick Bet-David, we did.
Yeah. That's
No. So you do know his background then,
just a tiny bit, but go ahead.
because he is the most Israeli man who is not from Israel or Jewish.
Jewish.
His name is Patrick Bet-David. On first sight, you're like, Felix has said this as well, where he's like, oh, he's from Israel, right? And he's like, nope, he's not. He is Assyrian, and I believe
they fear nationalism when white people get
you can't hear it
together.
yet. Hold on.
What does that mean that I'm valued?
It's because they apply it to World War II.
That's what he calls the channel.
They say, well, white
Valuetainment.
nationalists do what Hitler did because he was a white nationalist. So they say that when white people get together and are nationalistic, it's like the Nazis. When other people get together and they're nationalistic, it's not. Is this actually true? Is this the largest psyop in history? I mean, World War II has had such a profound effect on our culture up until this point now. World War II is the basis for all good and bad in the entire world. If I say
noted scholar of history,
it is
Andrew Tate.
it is like legitimately crazy to see somebody who is having like the conversation of an 8th grader, but it's like the names of like a bunch of like now people in the White House are on the wall behind him. Yeah, like it's a little alarming.
If you name the worst person in history, you'll probably say Hitler. You won't say Stalin, who killed more because he was on our team, or Mao.
I love that they're also like deeply anti-communist at the same time. Like it makes sense, but liberals also have this kind of attitude. Like he's just doing, this is the lightest form, the most acceptable form of Holocaust revisionism that even liberals also entertain due to a lack of understanding or lack of knowledge or the deep resentment that people feel towards communism, where they just do like, well, Stalin killed more. Actually, he was worse than Hitler. Maybe we were on the wrong side during World War II. Like that's the inevitable logical through line that you follow through. Great stuff, though. Simone, I have a question for you.
Let's go.
This is something that I've talked about on Bad Hasbara as well, but I don't understand why liberal Zionists who are like otherwise progressive on other issues, especially those living in the United States of America, like how they don't foresee the allegiance that they've cultivated with guys, not like Andrew Tate, but like, maybe the average American Christian Zionist, as not on shaky grounds that could inevitably turn very dangerous towards them, but instead like this, permanent allegiance. Like I feel like when people started saying America was built on Judeo-Christian values, like there was a point where I think a lot of progressive liberal Zionist Jews started believing that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you legitimately believe that. Like these guys will 100% quickly turn that conversation over to, no, America was built on Christian values. What the fuck are you talking about? Like there's already a lot of, or always has been a lot of nascent, unexamined anti-Semitism everywhere in the United States of America and in the Western world. But because of Israel's actions constantly being portrayed to the uninitiated as being done at the behest of Judaism, falsely associating Israel's actions with Judaism, I think the first interaction that a lot of people have, paired up with the anti-Semitic tendencies that people have, lead them to think, no, it is, yeah, okay, Israel's killing a lot of babies, and it is for the Jews. I don't like the Jews anymore, is like the way that I think a lot of people encounter this subject, and that's how you explode anti-Semitism.
Yeah, well, I'm curious what you... I'll say two things on that. Like, first of all, I think this is why it just really drives me crazy when I get accused of anti-Semitism, because I'm like, do you understand that the Jews who are publicly deconflating ourselves with Israel are actually doing more to fight anti-Semitism around the world right now than all the rest of these organizations that are, you know, they say they're fighting anti-Semitism, but they're actually just doing Israel advocacy. I mean, I do think that it is, there's kind of like a double message happening right now. So like pro-Israel organizations basically say, you know, you have to stand with all Jews. That's standing with Israel is standing with Jews. But then when Jews around the world get attacked, receive that blowback for Israel's actions, they're like, what the hell? That's anti-Semitic. And it's like, you can't really have it both ways. I think, as you said, like the average person, that contradiction doesn't make sense to them. And I'm not saying I'm against, you know, random Jewish people being targeted for the actions of the Israeli state. And I'm also against the Israeli state saying it's acting on behalf of Jews around the world. Yeah. But I think the other part of the question, I mean, I think the easiest answer is like the ADL's conference this week was like a really good, I think, showcase for this. I mean, the ADL has formed like, you know, a deep alliance with the far right in this country, right? I mean, you had Elise Stefanik headlining their conference, and you know, when she made like there's this great article in JTA about the conference where Elise Stefanik, you know, white nationalist,
supported a Holocaust revisionist in a New York primary, famously.
Did she really?
Elise Stefanik, yeah. Hold on, let me pull it up real quick.
She's my mom's registered to vote in her district.
Really?
Yeah, the upstate. It's
oh, there you go.
She's a special one.
Elise Stefanik.
She literally made her name being one of the biggest proponents of Great Replacement theory in the House, and now she's like the champion of anti-Semitism on campus.
Stefanik back candidate praised Hitler, questioned Texas and Buffalo shootings.
Oh, there you go.
Oh wait, Carl Palladino.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, he's like an old. That's amazing. I like that he's so yeah. Carl Palladino. He got in big trouble, governor, and it was like a total. He's been a walking nightmare for years. No, it makes sense that she would cling to that.
Yeah. In 2022, Stefanik endorsed Carl Palladino in the election to succeed retiring U.S. Representative Chris Jacobs in the New York 23rd Congressional District. Stefanik reportedly had a history of disputes with Palladino's rival in a Republican primary. Palladino made comments on a radio show in 2021 praising Adolf Hitler, saying he was the kind of leader we need today. Stefanik condemned Palladino's remarks when asked about them by HuffPost, but did not withdraw her endorsement. After Palladino called for the execution of Attorney General Merrick Garland, former Republican Congresswoman Mia Love called upon Stefanik to rescind her endorsement of Palladino. Stefanik actively campaigned for Palladino, hosting a tele-rally for him the night before the primary.
I mean, lines up.
That's the number one. That is the number one defender of Jewish people.
Our ambassador to the UN.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
I mean, it's crazy. So like, she's like the headline speaker at their conference. You know, then she makes some like kind of out of pocket pro-Trump. She like said something like, if Trump were president, October 7th wouldn't have happened. And then all of a sudden, people were upset, right? And there's all these great quotes that are like, oh, this is a non-political conference. Like, what is she doing? You know, bringing politics in here. And I'm like, guys, where did you miss the memo?
I mean, the one I think of is I still can't believe he blew this. Like
apparently she got booed. Stefanik Buddha ADL summit for claiming October 7th wouldn't have happened under Trump.
But to be clear, like everything else she said, you know, we're going to make the list of students, we're going to deport the students, we're going to fight anti-Semitism at the UN. I mean, all like the idea that all of that is fine. It's like, I think that there is, I'm curious if you experience this still. Like, I think in parts of the communities that we grew up in, there's an internal narrative that like Israel is kind of just like our own internal issue, right? And so we're glad that these people help us, and we have to form these unlikely alliances, and it doesn't connect to the kind of broader politics. And I mean, I obviously think that's not just laughable, but like insane when you're literally.
Were they booing him because they were like, no, it definitely would have happened regardless because the Arabs are like anti-Semitic parasitic monsters? Is that what it is? Like,
it's also like a lot of the people at the ADL like are like they voted for Kamala Harris,
right?
They voted for, they were like they're Democrats. Like this is a I don't think that they represent like the broad, as the Gallup polling today points out. They do not represent the broad, you know, majority of how Democratic voters and people who identify as Democratic feel about Israel or Gaza or anything that's happened in the last year and a half. But the ADL and a lot of these organizations, like if you look at the people who fill these rooms, who attend to these kinds of conferences, like it's not CPAC. You know, just because it's crazy Zionist, it's very, you know, like they believe in a very dogmatically pro-Israel, pro-genocide policy, and as evident, you know, as Simone was just discussing, like everything, like particularly around campuses now, you know, things that are draconian and hard line that we would associate with like the worst qualities of McCarthyism, but they also, it's not CPAC. Like it is I think like there is a meaningful distinction there.
Yeah, I mean, people still think they're at a conference of a civil rights organization that is literally helping dismantle civil rights protections in this country right now.
Yeah. And the thing I was bringing up was the green, but to me, the like sort of the most emblematic, like the moment that like we'll be telling our kids about, like to this effect, is the like Elon Musk Sig Heil. Like that there was this, like that he does the salute. And
shouts out Barry Weiss,
immediately opens the door for all these other fucking people to do the same thing, whether it's Bannon or that weirdo priest. Like all these people do it. It becomes like this viral gesture that people associate with right-wing movements of the moment. You know, it is normalization, cliched as the word is. And like Greenblatt's initial response was, well, and then he eventually has to.
What did they call it? The awkward gesture?
The awkward gesture. Yeah. And then
he's autistic. Like, he's autistic.
Oh, yeah, he's stimming or whatever.
Yeah,
and, then,
and now Barry Weiss also.
Yeah, it's like it's like he's, you know, so that to me is the like in miniature. Like the whole thing just gets summed up in that like because these people are pro-Israel, they will give them the not just the benefit of the doubt, they'll defend them.
Yeah.
Yeah, actively. But it's also important. Like this is what these people have been doing for years. I mean, Jonathan Greenblatt, you know, took a selfie at the opening of the Jerusalem embassy when Trump moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, like with a lineup of the craziest far right
people who he had literally the ADL. Trump won. The ADL was against like Bannon. It was against all people he was putting in his administration.
Yeah, I mean, they did the Jews will not replace us shit at Charlottesville,
yeah, like 2017. It was like, you know, like within the first few months, you know, that would be like 3 months from now, or sorry, 5 months from now, if it were the, you know, if you know, in today's terms, like it was totally bizarre and like insane. But you're exactly right. He backed down.
The Tree of Life synagogue shooting was a Trump supporter who literally outflanked Trump. He talked openly on Gab, the neo-Nazi website, about how I love Donald Trump, but he's not doing enough to like deal with the Jews that are bringing in the caravans, which is such a common trope that has existed in perpetuity whenever they like that. That's super normalized. Like that's what Tucker Carlson was talking about.
Replacement.
That's the replacement theory. That's what also Elise Stefanik has also boosted. So, and I think that's what the Buffalo shooter also believed.
I will add, I think that a lot of people believe that like the anti-Semitism that arises from discourse about broader replacement theory, that there are elites who want to use immigrants to replace the disenfranchised right, true-blooded like Americans or what, believe that like the anti-Semitic quality of that is like foam spilling over the glass. It's unfortunate, but the thrust of our point, which is that there is like this unaccountable elite that wants to replace you with like a Filipina nurse or whatever, like that's like that's the ball game. And so Elise Stefanik, like, does she herself have anti-Jewish animus? At this rate, perhaps. But it's also entirely plausible to me that she doesn't have any, but she actively does not give a shit about those who do. This is definitely the bargain that people like at Tablet Magazine make, because they believe that the thrust of their argument is like wholly true and that they can identify with. So they will cover it up. They'll actively cover it up.
Yeah. There was another funny moment where this contradiction amongst like a relatively progressive liberal Zionist figure who was wearing a fucking IDF dog tag at the anti-Semitism congressional hearing, talking to Josh Hawley. I don't know if you guys watched that.
The one yesterday?
I watched it yesterday when it was happening. And it's like he has the yellow ribbon for the hostages. He has a fucking IDF dog tag on. And he has to describe to Josh Hawley that their position overall is, alongside the ADL's position apparently, that it is not acceptable to deport students for their, which I was shocked to hear that was the ADL position as well. But that their position as administrators in an institute of higher learning is that they should not deport students for protesting against Israel. And,
this was someone from the ADL who said that?
No, it was I forget what organization he was from.
Was it Kevin Racklin? From Nexus?
Nexus, yeah. Now I don't know what his like actual opinions are, but it's very obvious that he was like even he was like, no, we can't, like that's not acceptable. Like you can't just like deport people. And then Josh Hawley kept saying like, you don't want to deport students who assault Jews? You don't want to deport students who assault Jews? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, and they accused him of being on ketamine. I have heard that.
Oh, wait, Josh Hawley or the person from Nexus?
Kennedy, I think. Senator Kennedy asked Kevin if he was on ketamine. I mean, anyways, like I think the point is that like what basically has happened now is like you've had all these, like Kevin, I would say is someone who's like a kind of mainstream liberal Jewish guy who's
society perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, he here it is, by the way. Sorry. Keep going.
Well, it's just like at this point, what we've had happen is the kind of normalizing of saying that the positions that the vast majority of American Jews hold are it's a very slippery slope to just be. I mean, the obvious endpoint is Trump saying, the 80% of Jews who didn't vote for me are disloyal, all of that, calling Chuck Schumer a Palestinian. That whole kind of like discourse, and then Steve Bannon, what I saw someone in the chat said this earlier.
The Bannon
just saying, liberal Jews who don't support Israel are the greatest threat to Israel, the greatest threat to our movement. But the point is that like when groups like the ADL constantly normalize calling people like me and Noah anti-Semites, out of the consensus, all these things, like it's just very easy to keep moving that bar like farther and farther to the right, where it just says that like the 80% of American Jews who aren't MAGA are disloyal.
Yeah, they're not sufficiently pro-America. They're not sufficiently, or they only care about Israel. We should just send them to Israel. That is the end point of this. And I don't know why, like otherwise progressive Jewish people just have been so brain broken by Zionism and internalized this so much.
And
that
also,
they just, can't see
I will say, it only took 3 years for the Ukraine war to become such a domestically politically polarized thing that Trump threatens to deport all of the Ukrainians, given protected and refugee status in the United States. Like, I do think that there is like a quality where there are at least a few people in the pro-Israel movement who've been watching what's happening to the Ukrainians and to the like the way that like Trump has been managing like the cessation of hostilities in that war, and are thinking like, well, maybe in a decade or two, the situation could be such that like we're the ones in that position as well. Like I think that there is like a certain amount of like recognizing that this is just like this is excess, even by the standards of people who do believe that like it's an unsafe time to be a Jewish student on a college campus or whatever.
Yeah, that's the other side of this story, because I think it like the reason why I keep asking you this question is because like I mean, you've obviously written and talked about extensively about the pervasive nature of Zionism as a formative part of the social conditioning of American Jews, who still very much are progressive with this very notable exception, and there's a contradiction there. So could you elaborate a little bit more on how that journey begins? Maybe even by talking about your own personal experiences.
Sure.
Growing up. You want anything?
I left a glass of water on the counter.
Hold on, I'll bring that to you. But I'm gonna get it from there.
Oh, great.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good. Well, this is
this one goes back.
Yeah. This is great because Noah got to see some of this in action because we had our journeys alongside each other. I mean, I think that you just kind of said it, but those of us who were raised with this narrative of like civil rights, of being kind of on the side of social justice, I came to campus genuinely being like, I care about social justice. I care about Israel. These things are not in contradiction. Like, I'm going to make some friends. I'm going to tell them my truth. They're going to teach me their truths. Like, it's all going to be good. And, for those who've seen Israelism, it was a long journey of kind of like facing the contradictions in the worldview that I was raised in. Many nights of like staying up late talking with my roommates about why I believed the things that I believed. And ultimately it was, I think for people who are on campuses right now, like I'm one of those people for whom campus activism like shook me to my core, and it didn't happen overnight. I initially was like, why is my community not doing good enough Israel advocacy? I went back being like, guys, we got to have better talking points. Like, we got to fight back against what these students are saying. And
you were a Hasbara warrior.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I was like, we got to do better Hasbara. And I went looking for better answers. And the reality is that there aren't better answers because this thing isn't defensible. And once you kind of stop using those justifications about most moral army that I think it's really hard to face that people you love are complicit in something that is monstrous, and to face that like you think of yourself as a good person and you are supporting something that is bad. Yeah. And it takes a long time to kind of unlearn that kind of programming, and to like, I mean, Noah and I were both people who, like, as college students, really had to sit together and like turn over these worldviews together.
Damn, she keeps throwing you under the bus, Noah.
No, it's true though.
I'll
give her.
Wait, throwing you under the bus?
No.
She's one step removed from pulling up the Berkeley article.
No.
Oh my God.
I talked about on stream with them divestment. Your junior, like.
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Our shared experience. No, because Simone and all, like, I had a little bit before college, because of my own experiences in Israel, like a bit more of the like loosening before I had come to campus. Like the jar on my Zionism had been loosened, let's say, or the lid on it. But then it was like when we were at the campus, like it like there was still a lot of work to do and a lot of room to grow, in that we, I mean, to me at least, it felt like this like progressive, not in the political sense, but just this like this continuing experience of just like learning how this thing that we had felt was like our community, the world in which we came from, like the institutions and establishment that like taught us what we considered like the social justice values that we brought with us where we went, like this experience of like constant antagonism and rejection from like what were really not hostile positions or even that confrontational, particularly by the standards of today. Like we were, like Simone and I were very involved, and the way we got involved in that was we were involved in the J Street U chapter on our campus, which I've talked about on the stream before.
Which you were, so you were like a little bit more woke already, though, in comparison to like.
No, I mean, I say that, but it's like I came as a freshman, Simone was a junior, and like she was on the national board. She like we were like
I organized Noah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm here because of her. But the thing that was very like
no wonder you were on the 2020 list. Just fucked up.
The thing that was
making little pro Hamas Jews all around American college campuses.
I personally am responsible for all of blowback. Where's my royalty?
Yeah. We was this experience of like we tried to get like our chapter recognized by the Jewish Student Union within the Hillel, and that was this crazy ordeal, both because of the insane like bylaws of that organization, but it just became this excuse of like, yes, we want a two-state solution. Most of us identify as Zionists, and like we were not allowed to have our club be affiliated with Hillel. Like that was like, to me, part of this like experience of like combined with like learning and all of the, you know, whatever, like the ballasts being removed, holding up my Zionism, you know, like defense is like most moral army falling away. Some of them already had by that time, but just, you know, it was, like I said, a progressive process that just sort of accelerated and sort of set, at least speaking for myself, certainly set me on the path of you know, being even more critical of even more critical of what I had felt like it was a journey. It wasn't like an end point. I didn't feel like, oh, I've had these realizations, it's over. It was like a process that set me into being into the kind of person and place I am today over many years.
I would also say like the things that you and I experienced together on campus, it was like, you know, one of the critiques that we often get from people to our right is like, why aren't you trying to do change within the system? Why aren't you trying to do something that's like, I don't know, more conciliatory, more, you know, slow and incremental. And like, I cannot tell you like how radicalizing it was to be a like young liberal Zionist coming into my Hillel and just being like, hey, can we just like talk about this thing that I heard about? Or like, can I just have an activist who, you know, is deeply committed and lives there and but also wants to tell us about these things that he sees? And they would like, students would come into our meetings. And this is again, like, I can't even imagine a decade later. I know that what's happening to college students now is way crazier than what happened to us. I mean, we would bring these speakers, students would sit in our meetings with cameras. There's like 6 of us being like, hey, we just want to learn about what's happening in East Jerusalem. And like,
but not to cut you off, but chat at this point, like engaging in like anti-Zionist activism, right? You're still talking about like,
oh no.
Yeah. She's talking about
we
her
were like
positions
the nice
as a liberal,
kids at Hillel trying to be like, let's talk about the kind of harder things about Israel so we can try to make it better.
Yeah.
Like, because we care about our community, we want to talk about hard things and we want to try to change them from the inside.
And I will add, like, if there was like a political dimension to it on the national level, which there was, so it's not an if, there was, it was, in the words of like the organization from J Street at the time, we were Obama's backing bloc. I mean, that was, you know, like I think of that phrase like all the time. Like the idea was we viewed ourselves as Obama's shooters on the college campus, backing up what his efforts were with John Kerry to bring about a 2-state solution. And, you know, like so to Simone's point about like what it meant, oh, why don't you work from change within the system? It was like we were doing educational events on campus focused on coexistence without any meaningful, like radical political valence. And then, you know, nationally, what was it? Saying that Obama's doing a good job. It was not radical by any particular crazy experience.
This shadow says, people don't realize how ingrained Hasbro is to American Jews, especially young Jews. I remember at my Jew camp, we had an Israel day where Israeli soldiers would come to our camp and simulate combat drills with us. Everyone thought this was normal.
Yeah.
Like, there is I mean, look, as an outsider, okay, as someone who is not, also shout out Simone, we met at a J Street U conference in 2014. Haha. Damn. Okay. Why? Okay. All of you guys are actually connected to one another. What the hell is going on?
That's right, Hasan.
Everybody's met
Keep
everybody.
an eye, Hasan. Be on good behavior, Hasan.
So, oh God, I'm gonna get clipped. So, I feel like there must have been a pivotal moment for you, though. Like, so you're saying that the reaction that you got from, like Jewish groups that technically are supposed to welcome you because, like, you just have dissent within your own in-group, them pushing you aside and saying that you're like woke, you're doing like woke, silly, anti-Israel nonsense, despite the fact that you were pro-Israel at the time. Was that like the pivotal moment that caused you to reflect on all of the like obvious propaganda that you were growing up with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's always two kind of things at the same time. It's like you're seeing the reality on the ground in Palestine. You're seeing what Palestinians are experiencing. It's a radicalizing experience. And then at the same time, you come back and you're like, because initially I was like, guys, do you know about this? You know, it was like really innocent. I was like 18 and I was like, can we have a good faith conversation about this thing that seems really bad? And the answer is no, you can't have a good faith conversation. And one of the things they say is like, you're not supposed to air the community's dirty laundry. So we were like,
my God,
we were trying to have these conversations.
Wait, to bring up the example of this, the one I will think about forever. Were you? I forget if you were abroad this semester, but when we went to the Consul General's house,
no,
you weren't there. Okay,
no.
So yeah, you were because you went Yeah, Simone was abroad the second semester
of your freshman year.
Right. And
Okay.
so
We're going deep into
this is
deep Berkeley
this
now.
is lore dump. No, but so the Israel consul general at that time had a really beautiful home in Piedmont, like a wealthy a wealthy enclave near Berkeley or whatever. And a bunch of like Jewish student leaders were all identified to go there one night. And like essentially the message from this consul general was to all of us, like, you know, it was like a warm vibe, everybody smiling coming in. But he was like, listen, it's not good that we air our dirty laundry in front of the public like this. Like, this was a thing I was told directly by an Israeli diplomat, you know, speaking to a room full of college students. And, you know, again, I was, at the time, I must have been 19 years old. I thought it was normal. Or at least I thought that if it wasn't normal, it was like a sign of how serious and meaningful the work we were doing was.
I'll say for me, like the final straw of my college experience was that you already talked about this, that there was a divestment campaign again during my senior year. And I'm not proud of this, but basically what we did as the J Street U chapter was that we were like, okay, so let's not do divestment. It was the, you know, don't divest, invest in peace, you know, show that we believe that, you know, America can be a force for good and blah, blah, blah. And so we wrote a bill that basically said that we supported, you know, an end to the occupation and dealing with the settlements. It was super mild language, but just basically like, you know, pro two-state solution, U.S. diplomacy kind of things. And we're in a closed door negotiation with other folks in Hillel. And one of the students said, well, you need to also have Hamas rockets in there if you're going to say this. And I was like, okay, well, if we put that in, can we also say like the human rights violations? And they were like, no, absolutely not. And ultimately where the negotiation between us ended is like one of the students explicitly saying to me, our organization will not sign on to anything that has anything critical of Israel in it. And so ultimately I found myself in this position where I was like, why am I trying to do a unity thing? Like I have this, one of the things that we like in the kind of Jewish community, one of the narratives is about communal unity. That's how like all these organizations, ADL, AJC, all these groups, like part of how they have their mandate and kind of advance their hegemony is by demanding that like the Jewish community speak in one voice. And I really wanted to do that. But then I realized very quickly that like what the compromise of that was silencing myself and basically conceding to the hegemony of like, we will not say anything about Israel in public. And all of a sudden I realized like, I see myself as a person who wants to support change. I see myself as a person who is against human rights violations, all that. Why am I on the other side of the people? Like that was the moment where I was like, why am I on the other side of these SJP students who like, I agree with, I support, I disagree with their tactics, but I think what they're talking about, you know, I mean, they were talking about divesting from settlements. Like it was a really, it's like, it's something that I feel a lot of like sadness about the fact that like students like me were like part of blocking efforts like that. And of course, you know, after that thing, one of the students from the pro-Israel group turned around and wrote an article about how all of us in the J Street U chapter were like secretly colluding with SJP. And I'm kind of like, I wish we had been actually,
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
That would have been way more honorable than what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, they also had like, I mean, there was a real, it also feels like a bit of like a window, like a seeing with like goggles into the future, some of the conduct of the like really hardcore pro-Israel groups. The student group, I don't know if they still exist, but in our 8 day at Berkeley, it was called Tikva. And like these, it was just like the first time I'd encountered like a kind of like radical, like right-wing dogmatic and like carried over into this, you know, again, like they tried to like make us social exiles within Jewish spaces. They tried to make it incredibly difficult for us to be like, I think they did it within their power, which meant that they didn't have much ability to actually do it. But like to the extent that they tried, like they did. And I think the long-term effect of it, I mean, at least from my impression was down the line was that it like helped create an atmosphere that like, you know, again, continued to put enormous pressure on Jewish members of the community at Berkeley, obviously, who were, you know, wanted to have any relationship with like, you know, communities they'd come from and their contemporary politics, which has obviously just had the effect of making the organized Jewish community at the campus seem way right wing and pro Israel.
Yeah, I want to speak on that as well from my experiences with all of the young Jewish HasanAbi heads that I met at the campus protests, where they literally talked about being, and you're talking about this from the perspective of like still being a Zionist and still feeling outcasted, still being made into a pariah. These guys were already they were involved with JVP or SJP, or sometimes unaffiliated, but like were obviously at the anti-Zionist protests on these college campuses. Many of them were arrested as well. And they talked about not being able to take advantage of any of the Jewish community groups any longer because of their position on Israel. Like even if they were, even if they wanted to go to Hillel, for example, they were cast aside, and it made it harder for them to make friends. Is what they were like. It was a constant gripe that I heard from a lot of anti-Zionist Jews, that they felt isolated from their own community, the community they grew up in, for being brave and being bold and recognizing the truth. There's also a chatter in here that said, I haven't seen Simone's doc yet because when a screening was scheduled at my college campus in 2023, admin postponed the screening, then fired the professor who organized it without cause, then ended the beloved weekly free film screening program in retaliation at Emerson College.
Oh shit, I just met your professor last week at the Jewish Left Conference in Boston. Yeah, we really do all know each other, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really sucks. By the way, you can watch it. It is available for streaming now on Al Jazeera and on Vice. It's also on Amazon and Apple TV and whatever, but for free streaming, it is available. So
similar to the chatter on screen, the professor of the screen Israelism at Columbia back in early 2024 faced pushback from the admin to not show the doc, but she went ahead with it anyway. She has not been pushed to take a year off starting next semester.
No way. I mean,
she's been pushed to take a year off. She has not been pushed to take a year off starting next semester. What does that mean, Yubi?
Maybe she has been.
I think you meant she's been pushed to take a year off next semester. Oh, she has now been pushed to take a year off. Yeah.
Shit, I haven't heard about that. I mean, people, the kind of censorship, the kind of cowardice that we're seeing from university administrations right now is completely insane. I mean, also for people who have seen the film, it's let's put it this way. I think it's like pretty mild compared to some of the things that.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
it's
the other thing.
How mild it's.
Yeah. But the point is that it's describing something that's accurate and true for people, and that's even worse.
Yeah, that's something that I stress all the time, which is that, there's no place for anti-Semitism in this community. Obviously, like I don't allow it. There's not even like it. I actively work to try and pull people away from leaning into anti-Semitic opinions, anti-Semitic tendencies. And yet, time and time again, I get hit by the likes of ADL for all of the radical terrorism support that I engage in and all the anti-Semitism that I engage in. And there has been some success by the ADL pushback and other content creators as well in this space that have made it their lives mission to basically try and get me deplatformed. And I realized somewhere along the line that I think people like yourself or people like myself who command the attention of large progressive communities that have a bunch of young progressive leftist socialist Jews in it as well are more dangerous to the cause of Israel than anti-Semites who are also anti-Israel. And it kind of partners with this question that this person is asking: is there not a material benefit to Israel and its supporters that anti-Semitism increases in the West? And I think that the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu can actively, when he's not engaging in Holocaust revisionism, collaborate with like open anti-Semitic ultra-nationalist figures in Europe and even in the United States of America is because it is beneficial to the interests of Israel that Jews in the West feel less safe. That way, they either have to go to Israel, or even if they don't go to Israel, they always offer material support to Israel because it is at the heart of the settler colonial project, the ethno-religious supremacist project of Zionism, that there is constant danger to you, and that's why we must be strong and we must dominate our enemies.
Israel reconciles.
You can be a fighter by doing Hasbara.
Well, and it's like the idea is that like if anti-Semitism, like it's a sort of like here's like the logical procession of it. It's that like if we increase anti-Semitism in the West, if we make like the wandering Jew go back to where he wandered from, which is back to Israel, then it's he is embracing his true heritage and his identity. And that like structure of like hyper-nationalist logic and ethno-nationalist chauvinism is akin to the same logic that these people want to deploy to reconcile the political contradictions that exist in their own countries, in their own places, wherever those are. So it's also like, it's that the anti-Semitism, like it helps Israel in the sense of like how Israel is it's currently constructed, but like, it is like it serves a purpose in the worldview of these anti-Semites. That's not just that they actually think Jews run things, which, again, but it's like, again, this like model rogue state idea of this idea that like the way Israel has been able to use its ethno-nationalism to, again, resolve, like to pull its country together in their view and to make it the vibrant place that it is. That's what's worth emulating. That's what's worth encouraging. So if anything, there is a twisted fucking way in which people view active anti-Semitism as actually being the most beneficial thing possible for the Jews in the long run.
Yeah. And I think that is like an insane proposition. As someone whose name is Hasan, who's come to the United States of America numerous times before moving here in the post 9/11 universe, I always look at the situation. I'm like, it's as if Muslims in this country were actively being like, you don't understand. ISIS actually is true Islam, and you're Islamophobic for is saying that like what ISIS is doing is wrong. Like that's what it feels like to me when I hear someone who is like a vocal advocate for Israel over and over again. Except, of course, the difference there is that because of Islamophobia playing a formative role in manufacturing consent for the war on terror, people were actively making this comparison, actively tying Muslims back to ISIS and saying this is a your community problem. Whereas with Israel, due to the prevalence of the Israeli lobby and of course Israel's role in American foreign policy in the region, and its importance to the American State Department, you have the dual loyalty tropes being played out in a woke fashion by like Jake Tapper on CNN, like, because that's what it is when Jake Tapper says like, oh, you're going to a Hillel and protesting against, or you're going to a synagogue and protesting against the state of Israel, you're anti-Semitic. Yeah, devoid of context, that does come across as anti-Semitic. But when you add the context, when you factor in the context of the situation, when there's literally a real estate sale happening at the fucking synagogue that is selling off stolen Palestinian land in the fucking West Bank, and that's what people are protesting, you're actively tying this settler colonial enterprise that's currently doing a genocide to Judaism in the hearts and minds of many Americans who don't have any association with Jews at all. Like they've never met a Jewish person and they think like, oh yeah, they do run the media, I think. I don't know. Also, seems like they like killing babies. That's how anti-Semitism explodes in this country.
I will also say, I think there's one other country where there's like the context and like at this bend in the conversation feels relevant to bring up, which is in the UK, where like I think that the kind of like the racial and ethnic, like ethno-nationalist paranoia that is kind of rapidly consuming that country in a way slightly different to here. Like they just had Suella Braverman, a woman of like I believe Indian background, but who was previously Home Secretary, who had just wrote this whole essay in I think the Telegraph, big British paper, about how like I'm British, but I would never call myself English because I know that's like. That's not, I know where I'm from is essentially what she's saying. And again, there is this like retreat that you see in a bunch of different big Western societies now to believing and affirming these like radically offensive and untrue essentialist characterizations of how people are. And, you know, similar to what you're describing about like the idea that it's like, you know, it's like meeting a Muslim person and saying, oh yeah, like you must love all that Sharia shit. Like, you know, just like an assumption, yes, that both people all relate to their backgrounds or religions and what have you. The idea that like there is a version, a parody, like carnival, like funhouse mirror idea of like what the most like raw and true ideas of these national you know, categories are. And for Jew, it's Israeli. And clear, evidently, you know, I would say, you know, to emphasize your comparison, I do believe that for like Americans and many people in the West, for Muslim, it is ISIS. Like that's the like kind of like pathetic logic that has increasingly become accepting and commonplace. You know, it's a triumph of ignorance.
But then, and then for us, you have Jewish organizations who like, instead of being like, yeah, no, all Jewish people are not this thing. Yes. They're all like, yes, Jewish people are connected to this thing, and they reinforce it. And I think to go back, like, I think your point is that it is actually good for Israel, for Jews around the world to be afraid and to feel unsafe. This is why, you know, they are blasting in their media footage of college campus protests, you know, everything from like, what happened in Amsterdam, where they like kind of create an entire media frenzy.
That was so insane.
That was crazy.
The ADL, like months after it was revealed to not be a pogrom, and everyone was like, "Oops, my bad." For like all the officials that had immediately rushed to say, "I can't believe this."
Yeah, this is why we gotta like deal with all these Muslims. I mean, they went straight for, and like the woman whose video they were circulating, she literally had a video of the Israeli soccer fans harassing Muslim cab driver. I don't remember who was actually in the video.
They were harassing locals, and then they presented that as like a
locals are harassing the Israelis, and she's like, "Hey guys,
the Muslim hordes harassing Israeli fans who just gently wanted to watch a soccer game play out or whatever." And that was insane. The ADL came after me for that. They still, months after, everybody were like, yeah, my bad. We kind of went a little crazy with it. The ADL came after me to say, you know, Twitch still hasn't done anything about their anti-Semitic content creator, Hasan, who is, you know, who's
denying the thing that didn't happen.
Yeah, who's not recognizing the Amsterdam pogrom that took place.
Yeah, I mean.
It's psychotic.
It is psychotic. And I mean, I think like it's that the whole point of that is to kind of keep people who are less informed about what's going on in this feeling of like, you know, Israel might be kind of unsafe, but the rest of the world is way more unsafe for us. So we got to support this place because that's the only place we have. And that kind of, I mean, it's devastating to me, honestly, to see the kind of the paranoia and the fear that kind of promotes in certain parts of our communities. And the like,
I mean, it is their ads now. I mean, Yeshiva University, which is it's a major university in New York City, and like they have a medical school. I believe Howard Dean went there, and a law school, Cardozo, that's really ranked. You know, it's a for real university. It's and they market. They have billboards. I saw one in Jersey that's about like a lot of anti-Semitism going on. You know, you should, you know, you want to send your kids to a place that's safe safe from that. Send them to Yeshiva University, and you see the same university, but you see like the same shit on TikTok as well. Oh yeah,
I saw that TikTok. The little kids like in front of the laptop, and they're like, "Oh, which school can I get into?"
I don't know.
They're so scary and anti-Semitic.
At the end of it is YU, and it's like, "Oh, this is where I can go," and it's like, yeah, there's like. It's insane. The idea of like perpetuate, like it's
yeah, you know where Jews are not safe? The Upper East Side of New York.
Yeah,
like what the fuck?
No, Morningside Heights now is a no-go zone for Jews. Even though mostly Jews live there.
You have to literally be schizophrenic if you to believe that. Like that is the most insane. That pisses me off so much.
Well, think about how many conversations you and I had before we went to college about people who are like, listen, you're going to go to the campus.
Yeah.
And the people, they're going to be people there, and the people, they're going to say things. And the things they say about Israel, they're not going to be good. And you've got to be ready. You've got to go to war. Like the conditioning to like be waging like psychic pro-Israel combat on a campus. I mean, like conditioning's a bit strong word, because I will say that like, for most people who even receive this propaganda or receive this indoctrination, even if let's say they have ambiently pro-Israel attitudes, you cannot. I think that like it's a Sisyphean task to try and convince a population that like the American college experience is fundamentally like off and bad and wrong for Jews and unworkable. Like it's just not believable based on the experience, based on the facts.
Well, it is if you send a kid onto a college campus and say the existence of a Palestinian narrative and Palestinian protests means you are unsafe.
Correct.
So right now, when students are arriving on campus and there is a very widespread pro-Palestinian movement, I think there are a lot of young Jews who come onto campus and like before they've even had the chance to unpack the brainwashing, I mean, they do feel unsafe. I remember feeling
That's
that way,
true.
and it really took me a minute to be like, what is this thing? And to have the space to kind of like learn about it, unpack it. But I initially did feel like personally.
I think as well, I always remember like the feeling, like biting back the feeling, or at least and eventually confronting it outright. That this is like that this is language that's targeting or demonizing or goes above and beyond what even I was opening my mind up to. I totally remember that.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm also like, that's why I feel so strongly that this type of behavior from the American Jewish community, it's like actually abusive to children. Like it is hurtful to Jewish young people to put them in a situation where they are like so deprived of actual information and they are put into a situation where they think they have to be these like soldiers for Israel, defending Israel as is carrying out a genocide. I mean, I really do like, it's not to defend what any individual person who has probably done, you know, horrible things to student protesters. Like it's not to forgive any actions that young people take, but I do really sympathize with like the average, like the really extreme brainwashing that a lot of people arrive on college campuses with. And I really hope that like they are finding people who can like help them leave and help them understand what they've been.
Well, let me
raised
tell
with.
you, Simone, from my own personal experience having a podcast with a person that I thought was very critical of the sometimes it goes in the opposite direction.
I don't know where we're going.
I'm talking about Ethan Klein. We had a podcast together called Leftovers, and the podcast, of course, unceremoniously ended after October 7. We did like 2 episodes after that, and then the podcast ended. And the reasons as to why it ended is, well, at the time I thought it was because, you know, Ethan doesn't want to talk about politics any longer. But instead it turned into this whole thing where he spent the remainder of the past like 17 months actively coming after me and increasing the pressure valve, and also even successfully deplatforming a couple smaller pro-Palestinian voices, pro-Palestinian content creators by claiming that they had a Habibi tier list, like who has a Habibi pass tier list. And the bottom of the tier was loves Sabra hummus.
Oh my God.
And that was considered by the ADL and by Ethan Klein as the peak of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And they successfully banned these content creators for 30 days off this platform. One of the content creators was a Lebanese Jew as well. The one who made the tier list was Jewish. He was called a token and a terrorism supporter. I've, of course, been endlessly called a terrorism supporter for contextualizing the ways in which militant resistance exists against the apartheid state. And I guess the question I have is like, is there any point where you can just like recover that? Like, is there any point where someone who previously might have been critical, but like post October 7th, slowly but surely turned into someone who became very overtly pro-Israel, is like interested now in flying to Israel, I believe, with his family and showing everybody how wonderful and how multifaceted and how multicultural of a society Israel is, and is actively spending all of his bandwidth talking about the issue of Israel-Palestine while still simultaneously maintaining the position that they are truly pro-Palestinian, by the way. That's the
Are you saying like, do you think he's ever going to come back?
Is there any way that you can, like, not you personally, but is there any way that anyone can personally convince this person that, like, you know, they've lost their mind a little bit?
Well, I think I'm willing to look. I guess what I would say is like, I have to believe that the answer to that is yes, because I'm somebody who went through a political transformation. It took me many years. It took a lot of people talking to me, turning things over with me, and people did move me. You know, I always say when I do these screenings on campuses, like, you never know if the fight that you had with someone, or the like 3 hour getting into it where they left and you were like, damn, that person's never going to change. You never know that like that conversation might be sitting in a person's head and really like percolating, and like months later or even years later, they might come back and be like, that thing that you said really, really stuck with me. I mean, that's what the work of political transformation is. So that's one. I think thing two is like, I do think that we are going to see in many years from now, a lot of people who defended what has been going on for the last year and a half, who are going to wake up and have epiphanies. It's going to be because more reports come out. I mean, it's kind of horrifying to think about everything we know about what's happened in Gaza over the last year and a half. There are going to be more reports that come out of people who have, actually when people are finally able to go, there's so much more. We just know that there's so much more that's going to come out. And I think that, of course, there are going to be people who are going to have breaking moments. There is going to be something that's going to make them flip. I think a lot of people right now who are out there in public, like, have things gnawing at them. You listen to what they're saying, it doesn't all make sense, right? I think the question of like, what kind of accountability there should be for people like that, for somebody with a public platform who's done incredible harm, what kind of actual repair they have to make. That's like a whole other conversation to have. But I just have no doubt that there are going to be people who are, I mean, there's that like new book, I haven't gotten to read it yet, but there's that new book, like One Day Everybody's going to be against this, right?
Yeah.
And we're already seeing now, like Trump all of a sudden says, he's going to build these villas in Gaza. And all of a sudden people are like, this is the most horrible idea I've ever heard of in my life, as if they haven't been witnessing an ethnic cleansing campaign underway for the last year and a half. So I mean, think even just the fact that Trump is going to be stamping a lot of this means that you're going to have more and more people coming out and being willing to say things.
And I would also say that like the only thing on a personal level, I affirm everything Simone said, having also been somebody on the receiving end of those similar kinds of conversations, and hoping that, the grace extended to me, I can extend to others in the right context. But to that point, like, I think that people, like, you should also evaluate, like, how do people live, and like, what are they hearing, and what's in their ears, and what context are they existing in? And I think for people necessarily like whom Hasan's talking about, and Ethan, who, like, they work themselves into a frenzy and they make it difficult. They make it difficult for others to reach them. And I don't think that, that should necessarily change how one person acts, that like, oh yeah, like, will that person come into the fold? Should I try and extend every effort to reach them? I don't know. But it does mean that like, yeah, we should extend like, the hope, I guess, would be that like you can, inspire some change in a conversation with people. But if they don't want to hear and they're unwilling to change, then they won't.
I would also just say like, I mean, sounds like you got to deal with that relationship, but
that's just one, that's like almost a placeholder, really.
Yeah. But I guess like for me, I'm just like, somebody like that at this point has like a personal stake in not changing, because he's getting a lot of affirmation from his platform and so like, that's where you have to also be like, this person's career is now tied to not changing his mind. But there are a lot of people who listen to him who I think are worth speaking to and are worth
that's
trying.
Exactly perfect. You described it perfectly. That is my big frustration, is not this like singular individual who is very narcissistic, as most content creators are. I'm certainly not innocent of this either. But it's not the fact that this person like deeply personalized the resentment and the backlash that he was receiving from his own community, as someone who had cultivated a very progressive community over the course of many years, and then saw unimaginable amounts of feedback from said community because he kept saying things like Jewish Voice for Peace could be considered capos, or telling a queer Muslim content creator that like, enjoy Hamas, like Hamas will kill you for doing drugs and being gay, go to Gaza and enjoy that. Like, when people see stuff like that, they understand that, this is coming from a place where you have some unresolved contradictions in your mind about Israel, and you cannot like disassociate from Israel in a way that is meaningful. And then turning around and consistently saying like, well, all Jews are Zionists, so if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Semitic. Like, repeating, the classic propaganda points over and over again like that only built up a resentment in his own community, and then looking for a way out and basically pointing the finger of blame at me personally is, I think, the reason why, in his mind, he's like, I have to eliminate this person. I have to make sure that, I have to prove to myself and everyone around me, and maybe even the remainder of my audience, that like it was him. That is the reason why everyone turned on me. He radicalized people into hating Israel, and then radicalized them into anti-Semitism. But he's one person. It's inconsequential, but he has a relatively sizable progressive community of people who think that they're pro-Palestine, but they actively spend all of their time smearing with vicious smears of anti-Semitism and terror baiting, and claiming that everyone else who is pro-Palestinian is everyone else is pro-Palestinian, not like him, is. But
he supported the war and the genocide?
He didn't. He is like gone back and forth on it. Initially, he did not at all, but he just like has found this weird liberal Zionist position where he's like, oh well, it is a genocide, and it is fucked up. It is the war. The war is messed up, while simultaneously spending all of his time being like, well, if the walls were to come down, then all Jews would be genocided. Hasan wants all Jews, because I'm a one-state. I'm an advocate for a one-state solution. I used to be an advocate for a two-state solution, but I think the settlement project has completely eviscerated that from ever coming to fruition, unless there is, an ethnic displacement now of 750,000 Jewish settlers from both East Jerusalem and also occupied Palestinian territory in the West Bank. That is impossible. Like, that's never going to happen. So I think that the appropriate thing to do is eradicate the apartheid. And
can I just say,
please?
Well, I just want to say one thing. Like, I think that, again, I'm like, I can say, I'm like, about a person who I don't really, there's a stream of kind of liberal Zionism right now that is basically saying like, what happened over there is bad and is sad, but we're not going to do anything about it. Yeah. And that's like, there's a kind of trope about Israeli discourse and literature, this idea of shooting and crying. So, the idea that you kind of like support the thing that's happening, you kill Palestinians, but then you turn around and you cry about it, you feel bad about it. Yeah. And I think we should like, obviously like very actively resist, especially in a moment in which there's like an ongoing genocide. That kind of, it's not just like just a really harmful like way of thinking. And I hear this all the time from liberal Zionist commentators and individuals that I follow, where they're like, we supported the war, but not like this. Or, there's a podcast that is like a kind of niche Jewish community podcast that I sometimes listen to understand what kind of idiocy people in my community are hearing. And there was a conversation where their reflection on the Trump announcement about ethnically cleansing the entire population of Gaza, first of all, started out by one of the commentators saying, well, I mean, would it be nice if I could wake up one day and there were no Palestinians in Gaza? I mean, sure, but, that's horrible. And then the other guy on the podcast was like, oh, that's the Israeli in you talking here. This is on the Hartman podcast.
Oh, I remember. I remember this. I remember this bad.
And it's like, and then they went on to say, that would be so terrible. But again, they're still talking about it in the context of like, we support it. We're not going to do anything to stop it. Anybody who's calling for accountability, anyone who's calling for halting of weapons to Israel, the ICC, like all of these international institutions, calling all of them anti-Semitic. And so then what does it leave you with? Like, you say you're against the thing, but you're also against anybody who's going to do anything to try to stop it and to offer something different. That I don't think that is any, I think a lot of people in the movement would say, I would just rather the honesty of someone who's saying they support the ethnic cleansing than somebody who says, well, maybe I'm against, but will like kind of waffle that hard and keep people confused and complacent.
Yeah. And I do want to stress the importance of like the way that I think a lot of people do this in like relatively progressive circles or liberal circles is by always reshifting the attention back to October 7. Not in the same way that like the, you know, oh, I hope your beeper is beeping, enjoyers, but instead reshifting it back to like the trauma and the atrocities of October 7 over and over again, and constantly relitigating that, and also spreading misinformation in the process as well, like, you know, mass rapes that took place, or any number of different things that they say that has not been substantiated thus far. And you know, actively saying like you're a rape denier over and over again, and hyper focusing on the militancy aspect of those who are resisting against a settler colonial occupying force that has, under international law, no right to go into Gaza and bomb it into oblivion as a belligerent occupier. And I don't know how to bring people back from that position when they constantly turn around and just go back to like, well, the Ansar Allah movement is bad, the Hamas is bad, Hezbollah is bad. Like how dare you say that like these people have an understandable need for emancipation, and of course there is an inevitability to like you know, militancy happening as a direct consequence of like endless bombing campaigns that orphan hundreds of thousands of children.
I think that there is like embedded in all this, and sort of like what is implied by acknowledging like the horrors of what's going on and that it's really bad, but the thing that they can't, like that is acknowledged implicitly in that, but that they can't express, is the idea that then like, well, what reaction might this engender in the people that we do this to? And then comes the fear, and the overriding fear of like, well, what might they do to us if we were ever under the same roof in like one community, one state, whatever the arrangement is. And I think that there is a, you know, I think that this is an actively repressed sensation and thought for some people. I think it's just something that others may just feel in their body. The knowledge that like, well, if I do believe that this thing is really bad, but I'm not really able to articulate anything, you know, against it, then there's, you know, the knowledge, like this, like sort of, this like sword dangling over you, that, you know, that like, well, one day, like these people may deal to us the unkindnesses that we've dealt to them, which is not what I believe, to be clear. Like, I don't believe that there's like some Palestinian pain being dealt back to the Jews, or like that's not the line.
And history has never, that's never happened throughout history either, with like, I guess the exception maybe of the, well, even in the Haitian Revolution, I would say.
I mean,
that,
like there's a bunch of people love telling lies about saying like, oh, in Algeria they went to murder all, slaughter all the friends, but it's not how it works. But like, the anxiety is part of what I think is there, and that there is like this, you know, so when people say like, I'm afraid that like all the Jews are going to die, or all the like whatever, like that's what they're speaking to. And I personally, I don't know how you unlearn that or unteach that in an individual person. But I know that like, you know, encouraging humanity as a broad practice is like how you undermine it, by showing that like, no, these are fucking normal people who want to live normal lives, and they're not raring to go to like chop your head off. They want dignity. Yeah.
The reason why I dialed it back as soon as I said the Haitian Revolution is because like in the or during the Haitian Revolution, yes, there was a lot of violence, but the retaliation for it from colonial power, once again, tenfold back to Haiti, and the current predicament that Haiti is in is a direct consequence of that. So even in the Haitian Revolution, it still did not take place. I mean, I always draw parallels to the Nat Turner Rebellion, or the violence that took place during the resistance against South African apartheid, or the liberation struggle for Algerians, or the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which I think is a really decent analog. And yet, I do think that it's just like impossible for people to penetrate. It's impossible for me to penetrate the security blanket that they create around these racist opinions that like, no matter what, these guys are violent, they're rabid. I won't say it out loud that I feel that they're violent and rabid, but I am still scared that they are violent, rabid, and anti-Semitic. And it's just like impossible to shake through that like these are normal people who have been fucked over time and time again in incredibly meaningful ways, in ways that have ruined their lives, in ways that would break the soul of any person. And yet they've still demonstrated resilience, and on top of that have throughout time reacted to the extreme cruelty that Israel subjects them to, and have increasingly become more militant as a consequence of that. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't know how to like get that across to people, because the moment that you open up this conversation, I think they just go, nah, you're a terrorist, you're an Islamist fundamentalist, you love ISIS.
Yeah, I mean,
that sort of shit.
I think it's like a level of complexity that, like, I mean, first of all, you know, we talk a lot about how this is like the first live stream genocide in history. I think sometimes I have moments where like the most kind of humble part of me is like, it is crazy to live through this and to be making sense of it in real time on the internet. Where just like this much discourse about history happening in front of you is like something that's hard to do. So like, honestly, respect that you are doing all of this right now. I think that like, I mean, you know, I tweeted on October 7th something about how anybody who's been watching this situation could expect that it was going to explode, and was warning that it was going to explode. And people went crazy at me for saying that. And I think that, again, it's a level of both like humility and complexity that you have to hold to be able to say, like, this situation, the Israeli apartheid, what Palestinians live under every day, is something that no human being should ever be subjected to, ever. And the siege of Gaza, which has been happening for almost 20 years before this war, already you had reports of things like suicide rates among kids being through the roof, right? The kind of the inhumanity that people are subjected to there, not being able to go see your family for a funeral or for a wedding, having to get the army's permit to go see your relatives who live in the West Bank. I mean, these were the daily realities of, you know, not being able to get the materials that you need for the proper dental filling. Like this,
not getting building permits on the West Bank, like having 98% of them being denied, now 100%.
Yeah. I mean, all of this are like basic rights that human beings have to life and to family that Israel denies from Palestinians, and has denied from Palestinians every single day for decades. This is like why it makes people crazy that the kind of reality depicted in Israelism all happens before October 7th. And it's a really, I think, inconvenient argument to people who want the apartheid to continue, that when we say apartheid makes everybody who lives there less safe, this whole situation endangers everybody who lives there, and they don't like that. And that's why they accuse us of just being, you know, they just kind of brush it all with like, you know, terrorist supporters, justifiers. No, we're actually people who are trying to understand the situation so that we can end it, so that we can envision a different reality in which all people there would be safe with rights and freedom and all that. And they don't want that, because they want the apartheid to continue.
Yeah. There is this from Mohammed Al-Safin on Chapo, where he said that an entire generation of Palestinians have never even set eyes on an Israeli and knows them only by the bombs and sniper bullets they send, by denials of requests to seek life-saving medical care. Israelis have dehumanized themselves. And
Damn.
there is some truth to that. I mean, rest in power to Refat al-Raed, who also had said something similar. The first time he ever met Jewish people who were anti-Zionist was when he left Gaza, and he came to the United States of America, I think, where he saw that that Jews, in the way that he understood it from his own lived experiences, wasn't about just like slapping a Star of David on the side of a tank or a fighter jet and then like sending bombs to his house, or killing loved ones, and that there were actually Jews out there who weren't a part of this like monolithic force in the way that they interpreted it. And I think that Americans especially have, progressive Americans especially, have this understanding that like radicalization only happens in like online forums when you don't have access to your favorite Twinkie for the weekend, or I don't know, like when you can't eat burger. And they don't realize that like this, like what Americans or what the Western world perceives as anti-Semitism on that side of the fucking planet is not the same as like Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes has invented some kind of a Jewish supremacist attitude, that he has invented this perception of victimhood as Nazis had before him, time and time again, especially in the Western world. But for the Arab world, Israel packages its actions as Judaism, as doing so for at the behest of Judaism, falsely doing so, of course, and as a settler colonial enterprise, when it engages in these violent actions, like, yeah, people don't hate people there don't hate Jewish people. They learn to hate Israel, and Israel to them is just Judaism. That's the only expression of Judaism that they see. And I cannot explain that to Westerners in general who just will, we'll go, Hamas is a terrorist organization. That's it. Like it's a thought terminating term that people, I think, use as a mantra almost. They basically say, no, Hamas is a terrorist group. No, these people are violent. Like they just like tell that to themselves in order to justify not hearing the words that are coming out of my fucking mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking there's this book called Our American Israel that actually is being re-released on paperback pretty soon. I would really recommend it for people who are interested in learning more about the kind of shared mythology between the U.S. and Israel, and how like so much of how we think about Israel in the U.S. is also about how Americans want to perceive themselves, and so much of the kind of racist war on terror language, like all of that, it's very much like a joint Israeli-American project. And yeah, I mean, I think just, the thing that you said, like that totally flipped my world upside down. Also, the first time I met someone in the West Bank who was like, the only Jews we ever see are soldiers and settlers. Like, and I think for me, that's the book. It's a good read. You read it?
I have not.
Our American Israel, the story of an entangled alliance by Amy Kaplan.
Slaps.
Yeah, there it is. I'm repeating it right now. Terminator, another YouTuber I like, calls them everlasting thought stoppers. Yeah, that's simply what it is. It's just like, make sure you don't show your phone, by the way, to the camera. So you just keep it low.
Oh, nice. What happens if it's?
Yeah. The term thought terminating cliche was invented to explain cults. No, it is cultish thinking. Zionism creates cultish thinking.
It also
for sure.
it makes you not consider anything like context. Like, for example, like, who South Africa, the state of South Africa also called terrorists an official state language for like the entirety of their existence, the ANC. And, the ANC committed acts of violence, yes, but that wasn't why South Africa called them terrorists. It wasn't why they called SWAPO and Namibia terrorists. It's because
they had a righteous cause.
Exactly. It's because they had a cause at all.
Yeah.
There probably are there probably are people out there with a cause I don't disagree with. Point being, though, that like in this instance, it is evidently clear that if you have, if there is anything that resembles a context to those words, that if they've been said by other people in similar contexts before, you don't know that. You just, it's not like that would break the thought terminating function.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important to whitewash former revolutionary figures that have now been appropriated into like the permissible structure of a liberal interpretation of history that fall into the good bad dynamic. That's why it's important to say that Nelson Mandela abhorred violence when it's literally ahistorical. It's the most ahistorical thing that you can say. Nelson Mandela, who was of course famously in the terror watch list until 2008, the American terrorist watch list.
Nelson Mandela, who like neocons and right wing in this country hated, for among other things embracing Fidel Castro because of Cuba's role in ending apartheid. Yeah. But I mean, it is like, I think the terrorism piece of it is also like, look at who gets called a terrorist in this country domestically these days. And I think increasingly, look, if somebody does have like a notionally or nominally like liberal political consciousness, like I do believe that in rhetoric, those kinds of similarities are only going to increasingly become more stark.
Yeah. Luigi, also a terrorist, remember. But in terms of things changing, let's talk about this. Gallup poll shows U.S. sympathies shifting in the Middle East. Among Democrats, 59% sympathize more with Palestinians compared to 21% with Israel.
Insane.
That is a fucking insane change of attitude.
That is a generational shift.
Look at this. Look at where it was. It was in the high 10s to low 20s, almost in perpetuity. And then what happens? What happens at like around this this time frame? I'll tell you what happens. As much as I criticize these NGOs from time to time for playing a formative role in American imperialism, they actively say Israel's an apartheid. Okay? It's right around the same time where Israel sieges Gaza again.
And the Great Wall of Return, Great March of Return as well, sorry.
Great March of Return. Israel siege on Gaza again. The bombing of the Associated Press building, the assassination of Shireen Abu Akleh, and the occupation of Sheikh Jarrah. All of that, along with these NGOs coming out and saying Israel is an apartheid state. It is like they correctly, finally exhibited the bravery to say the truth. And I think in that process, as also alternative media was growing as well, and there was a more independent thought in this issue, and that people could have access directly to the Palestinians who could speak on their own personal plight, we got to this point where 59% of Democrats are now more sympathetic to the Palestinians. It's crazy.
It also, I will say, like, if you look at that graph, like the trend line initiates downward, like in a meaningful sense, like before October 7th, it accelerates way afterward, to be clear. We see the big drop there, but I think it's worth emphasizing that it is like, this was an acceleration of a trajectory that, like, I think Simone and I definitely would, I feel like we sensed and were conscious of when we were in college, you know, like it was, you could sense that a dam was breaking and that it was along generational lines, especially that it was just increasingly difficult for people who didn't have like inherited dogmas around this, if they're not Jewish and identify as Democrats, to like justify any piece of what they were reading in the news.
Yeah, I mean, also like these numbers on American Jews are also moving like crazy.
Oh, astonishingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, less than half in the U.S. now sympathetic towards Israelis.
Damn.
I will say that's a crazy way to phrase that, just because it's like not like it's just kind of funny. Like, they're not sympathetic to Israelis. They see an Israeli down walking the street and they say, I don't have much sympathy for him. It just is a funny way of phrasing it to me.
Yeah. Also, that also has the underlying assumption of like secret anti-Semitism baked into it, baked into the collective consciousness of people who are, you know, liberal or progressive. That's why. Because if anybody fucking said that about like French people, no one would be like, oh, I don't give a shit. Yeah, fuck the French. You know what I mean? Or British people. But because it's Israel, and Israel has packaged itself as the Jewish state over and over again in perpetuity, as it continues to do untold amounts of war crimes and terror, that you know, this simultaneously plays a role in people being like, well, that's a little scary. I
don't see any relationship between the headline and the subhead there. I think those
support for the establishment of an independent Palestinian state remains at majority level.
What do those two things have to do with each other? I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, that is going back to the previous thing that I was saying, though, is like there is this underlying fear of the same exact fear that like the historic oppressors have always felt, and is an unjustifiable fear to have, that like they will do to us what we've done to them. And like you admitted, or like you mentioned, there's an admission there of like, we are doing to them something very bad, which we'll never say out loud, but we are doing something bad to them. And while it's never happened throughout history, this is the fear, and that's why so many people who say that they're pro-Palestinian still try to draw the conversation back to like, oh, I do want a two-state solution, knowing full well that will never come to fruition, and simultaneously claim that like anyone who's a one-stater is actually demanding the Holocaust to happen again to all the Jews in Israel. It's a fucking psychotic thing to say, and yet so many people maintain this position, and I don't know how to, I don't away from this like insane perspective that they maintain. And keep
I think the big one is, I think like the facts are on your side, and just that it's like, that's not what oppressed people do. It's not historically how it bears out. And that like, if anything, like a far worse and more dangerous and far more reckless of a situation would be to create two separate political national categories, two different states, put them next to each other, and thus make their interests divergent, to like separate a common like reality for them. Like is actually like it's not doing that at all. That's an illusion. It creates a new common reality in which like they remain pit against each other. I just have never felt that like the idea, like once the switch flipped for me that like two states were both unworkable, like the moral force of that, of an argument for it, also started to like seem like it also dissipated for me over the years, and it's felt like a way of like a cop out of just saying like we can't trust Palestinians to live peacefully.
Yeah,
but that's embedded in it.
I mean, I think also when you're like, I don't know how we do this. I mean, the polling shows that we are doing it, right? I mean, these numbers have been shifting incrementally. Like more and more people are waking up, and I think the fact that we're like continuing to kind of like debunk the argument and put forth something different, like we're seeing that it's resonating with more and more people. And so like, I think even the fact that we're like still having these conversations it can feel really tiring and defeating.
I will also say like Hasan did a Theo Von show this week, and like the Theo Von interview with Gabor Mate, I don't know if you've seen it, but like Theo Von was at Trump's like inauguration, and he does this interview with Gabor Mate where it's like it breaks through on camera, like just like what the experience of a child in Gaza must be, like what his life must have been like, what his dreams must be and what they can't be, and things like that. And it's, you know, like the truth breaks, you know, in the right context, in the right moment, in the right mechanism, like the truth can break through to anybody in that way. Because we are all human, and we all do, even in our worst capacity, possess the ability to imagine and visualize and feel what life might be like for other people. And that naturally is a comparison you make for yourself, and it's devastating. And, you know, that's what a conscience is, at least to me.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the people who are actually in power in this country and in Israel, like, they just want to keep making things worse and make more and more people feel unsafe. And I think that you are hearing actually more and more admissions of like, there is, if you listen closely to the discourse, there is the admission that they know what they've done to Palestinians. They say it even sometimes, right? The Nakba never happened, but careful, we're going to do it again. Yeah. Right?
I
mean, that's a constant, that kind of double speak is really, it's very, very present. Like, I think actually when the ghost of the Nakba and the kind of admission of what is being done that is like the fear of the colonizer comes out a lot in that discourse. But it's, the idea that like people would be safer without apartheid is something that the people who are for apartheid want to very vigorously resist. So,
and by the way, like it's, you know, the colonizer thing, like it also like implicit, like what do colonizers do when the colony ends? They go home. Like I do, you know, in like the historic examples, and like that anxiety is like, well, if these people aren't going to go home, as the state has been for 7 years, like if that, you know, and people might leave in like a one state
like
hypothetical.
The South Africans that went to Israel.
Yeah, or America.
Yeah.
Shout out to some of our very good friends. I do think though that there is like a like that's part of like it's that's what is, you know, like that latches itself onto this anxiety as well, that like the fear of the colonizer also is like this fear that like they will be made to upend and surrender everything. They have to, you know, like it's not a thing that they can shake so easy.
Yeah. And people always are like, Hasan, how dare you say that it would be?
I think we gotta, someone's unfortunately gotta bounce.
Oh, you gotta go? I'm sorry.
We can wrap in like a couple of minutes.
No, this is perfect. No, it's fine. Thank you so much for coming on, by the way. Is there anything you want to promote?
No, I don't know. Thanks, guys. This was my first time ever on a stream. So
hell yeah.
Chat was great. You guys were fun. You guys behaved amazing.
Don't lie to them, Noah.
Well, it's the mic thing is over. That was before she got here.
Thank God.
But I still remember that.
No.
Yeah.
You guys were nuts.
This was great. The dog's amazing.
All right.
Kia.
I'm gonna see my friend out.
Okay, perfect.
Be right back.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Having me. Good to meet you.
Okay. All right. We always behave. That's a lie. You never behave, and you certainly weren't behaving. Okay. You were not behaving, but it's okay. The most frustrating thing is hearing family members say, "Of course, I feel bad for Palestinians. I feel sad. Hamas has brainwashed them and put them in this dangerous position." Yeah. Yeah, that's Hamas brainwashed them into thinking that the settler colonial apartheid is bad. Anyway, I hope that was instructive. What is this? Good shout out to you in this video regarding your combo. All right, hold on. Let me see if I can find. Does anyone have the article of Itamar Ben-Gvir from, I think it was on the Jerusalem Post. I posted on my Instagram. The old Guac 3000. She's on her Nancy Reagan shit. Yep.
Everybody has so much to say about that microphone, and yet nobody can just like pull up a link.
Yeah. Oh, I know. They love this. They love chirping. They're like, meh, meh.
There we go.
Here it is. Ben-Gvir accuses freed hostage Eli Sharabi of echoing Hamas propaganda in testimony. This statement came as released hostage Eli Sharabi, stated that his decision led to Hamas retaliating by worsening the conditions the hostages were held in. Eli Sharabi was echoing Hamas propaganda when he spoke about his experiences in captivity during an interview with Channel 12's Uvdales Thursday. Former National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said Saturday night. Sharabi had said Ben-Gvir's decision to enforce stricter conditions for terrorists in Israeli prisons was what led to Hamas worsening the treatment of hostages in captivity. I am proud of my actions, Ben-Gvir told Channel 13, adding that he would not apologize for the decision. If you get kidnapped, you're officially Hamas. It's funny because like this guy isn't even saying something that's like remotely pro-Palestinian here. And it, you know, why would he? He was held captive, you know? Just want to let you know that Noah was messing with all the knobs and settings when you were gone and laughing and saying chat will be so annoying. It's f***ed up, dude. Thank you, M. Hood, for telling me the truth. Gvir is a guy. What,
I do what I want.
I mean, barely. Okay. Kind of wild. The request links from track. Like we pay you to post links. Like we're paying to be secretaries is worse than interning XD. Dog, you pay to be a micromanager. All 40,000 of you. Let's be real, okay? This new Ynet article is looking crazy. Breaking. U.S. officials are losing patience. Israel's trying to sabotage U.S. talks with Hamas. Reports Ronan Bergman. Wow. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You're telling me for the first time American officials
It was an amazing, she lived an amazing negotiating process.
Yeah, what? No way, dude. American officials are accusing Israel of trying to sabotage U.S. contacts with Hamas? No. Remember when I covered this yesterday? Wait, what? Israeli police assaulted the families of those killed and imprisoned inside the Knesset after they requested to attend a discussion on forming an official investigation committee into October 7 events, which Netanyahu and his coalition have blocked. Wait, what? I don't know about suppressed news. I need to see a real article on this.
I mean, I will say in the same spirit, that's all. I have the same reaction to it. You're telling me that the Israeli police are beating up the families of the hostages.
Yeah, that's also shocking.
That's also never happened before, and not like only been filmed or photographed. Like a bunch of
the only people that the Israeli police don't beat are people doing pro riots. Okay.
Yeah, it's like
people who are like.
That's when they put on like the kid gloves. That's when they bring out like the paddy wagon. That's like friendly and
that's
nice.
That's when they open the gates of the military facility that they've detained the rapist concentration guards at and release them into the public. So that's funny though. Yeah, Knesset guards violently prevent victims' families from attending debate on October 7 probe. Oh my God.
They do this in the street. Like this has happened in the street too. I mean, it's really. And Netanyahu, like he takes like hits, he takes swipes at them.
Oh, it's so insane, bro. Ethan's gonna clip this and be like, Hasan is laughing at the hostage families for getting brutalized by the Israeli police. Ay, ay, ay. It is.
I will say I'm impressed with is that like a GIF in the article embed, or is that it's
Yeah, they made it into a GIF.
That's pretty.
Or a GIF.
That's pretty good.
That is, dude. How can people not look at this and be like, this is a troubling sign of a deeply unwell society. Okay. Like just imagine they're American. Okay. Please. If you have any, I mean, this is a community that gets it.
I would say like one way to put it though is like what is it that's like about coming apart? It's not that like, oh, it's just that like the police are beating these people up. Cause like we've obviously have plenty of videos of like American police beating people up for doing nothing in a room or whatever. But I think what's kind of nuts about this is that like that these people are not given like the equivalent of like sitting in the gallery at the State of the Union for anything October 7th related, suggests that they have a political crisis and a social crisis that is tearing the country apart and turning these people into objects of hate by the government itself. Yeah. That's like which leads to situations like this.
Exactly. And the reason why I always like bring this back to America is because this is me talking to the liberal Zionists, basically the liberal Zionists that live in the United States of America that still have some progressive values they maintain and haven't turned into Michael Rappaport. And they look to, they look to stuff like this and think this is simply a byproduct of Benjamin Netanyahu, not recognizing that there is a much larger problem. Okay. This is identical to conditions worsening in the United States of America as the American police and the American military become more aggressive towards civilians who have an understandable gripe and a reason to demand an adequate investigation, an independent investigation into the actions that caused their family members to die. Okay. Why would a government say, no, we're not going to do that? Okay. Why would they do that? If a 9/11 style situation occurred again in the United States of America and the family members were like, wait a minute, there's something really weird about this. Can we look into it? And the American military and American police were beating the shit out of those families.
Yeah, let's be clear. Like, there were a bunch of those families in the U.S. They just got ignored, which, is like what, at least in Israel's case, like, I mean, part of the problem is that, like, it points to the schism in this is that, like, there's a bunch of people in Israel who, like, maybe that, like, however they feel about the campaign in Gaza and all this other stuff, like, meaning that they're probably for it, but that, like, on the point of, like, they don't want to see violence against the hostages or whatever, but, there's, I mean, that to me is, like, what seems that, like, it's evidence of how this stuff just gets politicized. It's like, oh, if people do care about it, then let them get hit. You know, like, try and show that, like, you don't care that they have people that care about them or whatever. It's a dissent that doesn't matter.
Genuine, honest, and a bit pessimistic question. Do you genuinely wholeheartedly believe anything good will come out regarding Palestine as a person with family and friends in the region? This has been the case for decades. Nothing new, just another cycle with a 1,000 to 1 kill ratio and no progress. Yes, I do. I definitely do. And I think part of that is because the contradictions worsen, as you see stuff like this happen in Israel, as you see the Israeli economy crumble, as you see the benefits go away, the benefits of being a Western adjacent nation go away for the average Israeli citizens, slowly but surely, they will leave Israel. This is why I regularly maintain the position that the greatest threat to Israel is not Hamas or Iran. The greatest threat to Israel is Sherman Oaks. The greatest threat to Israel is Beverly Hills. The greatest threat to Israel is Boca Raton. Okay? Because if a lot of the people that live in Israel go, why the fuck am I still here? I don't get any to listen to the worst psytrance music anyone has ever heard and wear my capri pants in Boca Raton. They're just going to go to Boca Raton. Okay? And you're also going to lose, like, you're going to inevitably lose, like, a lot of the academic resources that you have. Like, you're going to have intellectuals and academics leave Israel as well, especially with, like, the academic boycotts that take place too. Like, you're basically shutting off your next generation by behaving in this, like, incredibly violent way. You're going to have brain drain.
I mean, just yesterday it was reported that there's a professor of computer science at Ben Gurion who posted under, like, the pseudonym John Brown on Twitter. I've seen his content. You've probably looked at tweets of his at some point or another.
Yeah.
But he, like, was suspended from his job, and he was, like, he was not publicly known that he was tied to this account, and it was because he said that Israeli soldiers had committed war crimes.
Yeah.
There's a computer science, this is like
the more shit like that happens, the more you hear about, like, 500,000 Israelis leaving Israel. Okay. The more the Israeli economy becomes unsustainable. That's why I said, that's why I kept repeating over and over again that, like, this is going to turn into, like, Israel eventually, if they follow this trajectory, is going to turn into a nation filled to the brim with just, like, rabid, uneducated settlers, okay? Like, ultra fundamentalists, ultra Zionists that simply, are having differences in opinion and differences in agreement in the Knesset over, like, whether women can read or not, with nuclear arms. Like, it's just, that's unsustainable. Okay, it's going to turn into a pure hog state, which it kind of already is turning into a pure hog state to begin with. I
mean, it's dependent on also, like, it's, like, similar. I mean, I would argue, like, people want like they think everybody wants to be like a U.S. vassal, right? Because they think that they could get to be like Israel, favored military treatment.
Yeah.
They could develop like a broad base, like industrialized society with a middle class and all these different things. And it's like it just projects this illusion of stability, all those things taken together over the last few years, when like the context in which that state exists has pretty rapidly shifted. And like the context in which that leadership operates, like what they believe. I mean, for example, like Mayor Kahana, a guy who it was illegal to support in Israel like 30 years ago because they thought that his version of extreme Zionism was so dangerous and so self-destabilizing. That's now a norm. And then even in the diaspora, like, Tablet Magazine is running Kahana was right articles.
Yeah.
You have like what were previously understood as effective boundaries for containing the ideology from like running too far amok or whatever, it's all been removed. And it's not because like they made a choice and it could have been undone at some point. Like this was always how it was bound to go.
You see liberal Zionists unironically touting the Kahana line, the Kahanist line of never again just means for Jews. Like that's insane. That's an insane thing to say. Like the notion that like, no, never again wasn't about anybody else. It was just about us. Like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? It's supposed to be about like Jewish militancy. When you see people who are otherwise supposed to be like progressive accounts on Twitter saying stuff like that, that is a turning point, I think, for average Israeli society and their attitude on these issues. What? Why not repurpose the IDF into a reconstruction force? These soldiers with real life skills. I mean, this is something that I've personally advocated for with the American military as well. But kick out the settlers and replace them with displaced Palestinians during the reconstruction process. Why sentence an entire generation of young Jews and Palestinians to endless trauma? I just don't get it. Okay, well, yeah, it's a very pie in the sky. Let's stop the side first. After October 7, I noticed that they were bringing fake refugees and fake asylum claims here as crime tourism. Coined the term crime tourism. What are you talking about? Why am I reading this? All right. Edging into radlib territory. I mean, I think that the American military is a jobs program, and I think that it would be nice if the American military's output wasn't, the complete wholesale murder of brown children overseas, but instead was to like build bridges and shit. That would be cool. But it's not going to happen in America, and it certainly is not going to happen in Israel right now.
Well, and also like in Israel's case, like they're struggling with the fact that like the more that they invest in their military, like that's also like one of the things killing the country, and that like is producing like this sort of like what's becoming like however long they go with this will become a feature of it, that like the heightened draw on reserves that is a cost on it is borne by the rest of the country. And like even if they're not about to like fall into immediate financial calamity, right? Like that's not a sign that they're able to like allocate investments in society in all that healthy of a way.
Yeah. And before Simone Zimmerman gets here, who is one of the documentary makers of Israelism, which we've watched on this broadcast before, I want to talk a little bit about the American collapse, because America and Israel are, one nation under God, indivisible, if we're being real. It's a favorite client state, and I understand that. But I think that due to the pervasive influence, the outside influence of the Israeli lobby, and due to the dedicated brainwashing, social conditioning operation that Zionism engages with on a regular basis, I don't think it's necessarily a favored client, but one that is just directly a part of the United States, and so valuable to the United States that like even when they fuck over the United States, even when they do counter espionage against the CIA, for example, it's still considered appropriate, because what are you going to do? Because it's that valuable to us. And also there is that level of influence. I would say this is like one of the things that people somewhat disagree with me on. This is like an attitude among anti-Zionists where they're like, they say like, oh, this is not something that you can describe purely on material grounds. I disagree with them on this issue. I think that it's like, I disagree with them on this issue because I think that, yes, the influence of the Israel lobby is certainly significant. I still think that the initial reasons as to why this allegiance was developed is because of Israel's position Israel's position as a unsinkable aircraft carrier in a resource-rich region.
And also that, like, I mean, again, like Israel, it's part of why also it's important not to lose sight of the idea of like Israel as a settler colonial project. Like part of the basis for that was that it was meant that Israelis and Zionist leaders, as they courted and sought to court Western governments and even collaborated with them on things like, you know, in the Suez Crisis with France and the United Kingdom in the mid-1950 in 56. I mean, I think what you can use, you know, what we can sort of suss out from that is that Israel viewed that settler colonial affinity not just as a, like, we're white, you're white, even though we're not really white, but you get the idea. It was also about how they could be instrumentalized as like a fellow white nation in this, like, you know, grand strategic game against, again, like Arab states, which were largely at that time, particularly in the Nasserist era, aligned with the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And you know, that
you can't do pan-Arabic nationalism and link up with the Soviets. That's terrifying, you know?
I think
but there's also white supremacy. There's also an element of white supremacy involved in this. You can't trust the Arabs no matter what. Okay? You can't trust the Arabs no matter what. They're Muslim, they're Christian, doesn't matter. They're still Arab, okay? Whereas the way that I think a lot of dumb Americans, a lot of Western leaders view Israel is like, well, those are our guys, you know? Those are our neighbors. And to a certain degree, they are, you know what I mean? Like that's that's the reason why, like, a lot of people, I think, initially were claiming that, like, you know, Israel is a white nation, a white supremacist nation. And there is aspects of white supremacy in Israel as well, with respect to Ashkenazi Jews, for example. But Israel has a shit ton of Arab Jews as well, you know, even though they're still, because of the ethno-religious supremacist nature of Zionism, the Arab Jews have a specific classification. They're still Jewish and therefore of a higher class than what they consider to be, in Israeli demographics, Arab. Arab implies someone from an Arab nation, or someone from even that area, even from Palestine, that is either Muslim or Christian. Yeah, you have Jews that come from the entirety of Levant and the MENA region in general, that are subcategorized under the banner of Judaism. Be careful. Arabs are also white, and Arab supremacy is just as real. An Afro-Arab, this cannot be denied. As an Afro-Arab, this cannot be denied. Okay, we're talking about some Arabs are white, some Arabs are not white. It doesn't matter. This is not the point that I'm trying to make here. Lock in, okay? Also, it depends on it depends on which country you're looking at. Yeah, go tell an American that Arabs are white, okay? I think Simone Zimmerman is here. We're going to be talking about the brain-rotting operation of Zionism and the pervasive nature of it, and how it basically breaks the minds of many otherwise progressive Jewish Americans. But yeah, hold on. Let me pull up a chair. You got one? Okay. And then I'm going to fix the microphone as well. 1 second. Hi. All right, here. Let's just fix this. Hold on. Where is? All right, chat. 1 second. I'm gonna fix the noise gate, and then we're gonna be good. Okay. I did it. All right. Did you watch either Mehdi Hasan versus Joe Walsh clip or the Sam Cedar Benny Johnson clip? Both very satisfying. No, I have not. I have not done either of those things. But yeah, okay. What else was I gonna do? What else was I gonna talk about here? Oh. We will, of course, be covering this part of the conversation, which I think is very interesting. Sympathies towards Israelis regarding the Middle East situation has hit the lowest in 25 years of Gallup's annual tracking. Support for Israel amongst Democrats has tanked drastically. 59% of Democrats sympathize more with Palestinians than Israelis in this conflict. That is a crazy number. That has never occurred. That has never, ever occurred in the United States of America, okay? That is crazy. I think this is the peak. This is the peak of sympathies for the Palestinians. And it's incredible. That's why I always say, no matter what, when I analyze the situation by looking at what things used to look like in the past, when Israel was being violent, Israel was doing sieges, Israel was doing the mowing of the lawn operations, it never got to this point. Never, ever, ever. Okay? And also, remember, all of this, like all of these sympathies from the public are coming at a point where there is unfettered, unrestricted, unlimited propaganda. Unlimited. Think about that. That to me is also insane. This is unprecedented, and I will not. I'm never gonna discount this, and it also does give me some semblance of hope. Okay. We won the info wars? No, we haven't. We haven't won shit. Okay. This is entirely in the hands of Israel. The only reason why 59% of Democrats sympathize more with Palestinians than Israelis in this conflict is directly due to the unrestricted, unlimited violence that Israel has done, so much so that it is virtually impossible to deny. It's virtually impossible to justify. That's it. It's all in the hands of the U.S., not Israel. Yeah, it's because Israel, for many, many years, I think, has greatly benefited from the cycle of dehumanization of Palestinians and had to continue doing that in an effort to create. You're discounting the work of Palestinian journalists? Don't fucking do this to me right now. Don't do this woke shit. Of course, it's entirely in the hands of brave Palestinians across the board who have filmed their own genocide, okay? Virtually every single day. Don't fucking do this rad lib shit, okay? That much is obvious. I'm talking about Israel's cruelty on top of everything else. God damn. It isn't as quiet anymore, and thus liberals are doing their survival tactics now, hence the remorse. Yeah. How did Americans feel about Palestine and Palestinians during 9/11, the Gulf War era? No, people just didn't even know anything, and they only thought about it in the terms of like, Israel's our ally, they're our neighbors. It is what it is, you know. They're good guys. They're the good guys. Like, people didn't put much thought into it at all. Yes, I know Bad Empanada made a video criticizing my take, saying that I'm a liberal Zionist or something. I don't care, guys. Yes, we can have disagreements, even if we almost entirely agree on everything. And every now and then, Bad Empanada freaks out over some minor shit. Okay, I don't care. I don't know why everyone is like, no, you have to watch this. Especially considering that, like, if you're a leftist and you understand the take isn't that fucking big, it's minor. I know. Even if the disagreements are minor and you consider yourself to be a progressive, you consider yourself to be a leftist, why the fuck are you trying to make drama between two commentators who are anti-Zionist? Like, I just don't get it. I don't care that he did it. Okay, if he wants to use mentioning me or doing a call out post on me as an opportunity to educate people on his perspective, then that's fine. You know, that's great. More power to him. But I'm not going to sit here and respond to it, and then you're going to clip it out of context and like send it to him and then blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. My thoughts on this are known. Okay. I recognize that Zionism is a fascist ideology that revolves around Jewish ethnic religious supremacy. I recognize that Israel is a rabid settler colonial enterprise that has always maintained an apartheid that started off with a ethnic cleansing operation that was planned by early Zionist militias. These are historically accurate facts that I reckon with and routinely repeat. Having said all of that, I also have a difference in opinion in terms of strategy with the likes of Bad Empanada. I live in the heart of empire. I live in the imperial core. I am living in the United States of America. I'm a Westerner, okay? I'm Turkish. I have a Muslim background. People call me a terrorist all the time. But having said all of that, my goal is to pull people from the... And if that is my goal, then I will never discount people that are, that I have disagreements with, that might even be engaging in like Jewish exceptionalism or whatever Bad Empanada is saying, because I get how social conditioning works. Okay. I understand how social conditioning works. I understand how that can change people's minds. Okay. At the end of the day, we are, what Hasan, what the fuck saying, dude? Firstly, Turks, same with support white supremacy for like support pan-Asianism version so well. Anti-Israeli Arabs, no problem. Same with differently. Bro, no, you need to learn how to write. Okay. I'm giving you an hour. Go back to the drawing board and you know, put together a coherent argument. I'm sorry. If you're having an aneurysm while typing that, I'm not going to entertain this. Disagreements are healthy. Imagine we could all agree genocide is wrong and this is what we debated. Yeah. I think that every person plays a role in this, okay? And as long as someone is anti-occupation, as long as someone demonstrates empathy for the plight of the Palestinians and they play a role in this, even if I have disagreements with them, even if I feel like they're doing white saviorism or whatever, okay, it still doesn't matter because it moves the needle in the appropriate direction. These things take time. It doesn't happen overnight, okay? The notion that everyone is magically going to rewrite decades of fucking brainwashing, overnight because of the historic atrocities that are unfolding when they are literally trained to believing that these are not real human beings and parasitic forces that must be purged. Like I recognize that it takes a long ass time, but they play a very important role. People in Israel play an important role. Even the hostage families who literally want the entirety of Gaza to be wiped out in the period of time when they are demonstrating against the Israeli government, that is creating political pressure for the Israeli government. Do I agree with their opinions? Fuck no. Okay? So many of the hostage family protesters unironically were like, we want to pummel Gaza too, dog. Just get our family members out first. That creates a point of pressure internally in Israel, even if they don't listen to it. Okay? Do Rhodesian voices play an important role? Yeah, I mean, South African apartheid is a great example of this because, yes, economic pressure and boycotts are important because it causes the population to forcibly reckon with the realities and the damages incurred by conducting a fucking genocide, by maintaining an apartheid. That's how it works. So yes, that is how this works. You know, I'm not in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, so I see no reason to LARP as such. But from my position, I will understandably contextualize how violent or militant movements begin, why they exist, how their methods have evolved over time. That is my job. Okay? And for that crime, people call me a terrorist supporter all the time, or a terrorist, or an anti-Semite all the time. Okay? To an insane degree. To a degree where people demand that the federal government take action against me. They demand that I get deplatformed. That's it. The Black Panther movement and Malcolm X played an incredibly important role in the civil rights struggle. But so did Martin Luther King. Despite both of these leaders and despite both of these movements being deeply unpopular at the time by broader society, okay? It's very important to understand that the struggle is always going to be multifaceted, and I'll take pressure from every aspect that I can get. And before people say, oh, are you claiming that you're MLK? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just explaining to you how social struggle and social progress has taken place in this country. I don't disagree with you at all, but I believe that you can also push the needle towards always bringing up what is also part of the Israeli provisions and Jewish exceptionalism when you can. I already do that. Shut the fuck up. I already do that. I do that all the time. Anyone who says that I don't do that is a fucking delusional, okay? Shut up. You're now demanding that I do something that I do all the time. Now you're getting clip chimped in the more woke, more radical direction, I guess. Anyway, are you guys coming? Oh yeah, I'm ready.